Enough with the darkness, it's time to spring forward. Welcome to another episode of Here's Something Interesting, a show where I chase my own curiosity by talking about the things that I find interesting and sharing them with you. Today we're going to talk about daylight savings time. If you had to guess a reason for why we have daylight savings, what would it be? Go ahead, take a minute and think about it. Chances are you might be thinking it has something to do with farmers. And in fact, that couldn't be any more wrong. I thought it was farmers too, but it turns out I'm wrong as well. In fact, farmers were some of the biggest opponents of daylight savings time from the very beginning. Now, this was especially true when daylight savings was first introduced in the United States in 1918. It was shortly repealed after that because the farmer lobby had pushed so hard against it. In the United States, it went back and forth with some cities having daylight savings and other cities not, and some states doing it and some states not, and it got overly confusing until in 1966 we decided on a 6-month daylight savings time calendar. In 1986, we added another month to make it 7 months. And then in 2005, we added an additional month, making a total right now of 8 months of daylight savings time that we have in the United States. Now, who's behind the push to give us more of this daylight savings time? Who benefits from it? It turns out that when we have daylight further into the evening, we go out more and we spend more money. One of the biggest beneficiaries of daylight savings time are gas stations and fuel companies. In fact, ever since we added that extra month to make it a total of 7 months in 1986, they've estimated that we as Americans have spent an additional $1 billion a year in gas. Is that right? Many historians link the original concept of daylight savings time back to Benjamin Franklin when he was on a trip to Paris, when he realized that we sleep through several hours of daylight in the morning, only to then not have as many hours of daylight in the evening when we're awake and moving around. He jokingly told the French government that they should launch a cannon every morning in order to wake people up so they don't waste any daylight. It's kind of a ridiculous idea. Let there be light. Sort of why he said it in a joking fashion. But it wasn't until many, many years later when Germany was the first country to introduce daylight savings time to their entire country. The reason they wanted to do it is in order to save on energy costs for World War I. They figured the more time people spent awake in daylight, the less energy they would end up using and the more they could save for the war efforts. So the original idea was to save energy, but a lot of people wonder why we still have daylight savings time today. In a study, the U.S. Department of Energy found that since we have enacted daylight savings time, overall electricity consumption has only gone down by 0.5%. Not a huge number, and in fact, other studies that have been done have shown that daylight savings time increases electricity consumption. Not sure how those numbers work out, but there are conflicting reports, so no one has an exact number on hand of how much we save or how much more that we spend. One thing is for sure, we're going out more often, we're spending more money, and we're going to those places in our cars and spending more on gasoline. I personally love daylight savings time. I enjoy being outside in the late evening when it's still daylight out. I'm curious what you think about daylight savings time. Do you like it? Do you hate it? Are you indifferent? Let me know in the comments below. That's it for this week's episode. Thank you for watching, and as always, stay curious.